And from there, yeah, guys, wanted to first and foremost want to welcome everyone, some familiar faces on here, back to another Speakeasy for Sports mentorship Q&A session. Excited to have you guys here again. Again, to give you a bit of background on myself, Sam Krosnick. My background is that I've worked in the sports industry for, I guess, 7-8 years now. Spent some time as a video coordinator, director of player development, with the Washington Wizards, the Orlando Magic, and the University of Nevada, and actually decided to start what is going to be Speakeasy for Sports, and what it is, it's going to be almost like a LinkedIn, an exclusive LinkedIn for basketball professionals, where no one's going on LinkedIn and seeing people in finance or accounting or real estate. Somewhere that it's fully vetted and exclusive for people that are working in the basketball industry to network and connect. The goal of the platform is the main goal is not to be doing, talking X's and O's and the best horn set or things of that nature. But because there are so many of those type of websites, the idea of Speakeasy for Sports is to help individuals grow in their careers and navigate in what it takes to take their careers to the next level, whether that means speaking with mentors in group settings like this, having one-on-one opportunity with individuals that have grown in the industry, or just connect with other people in the industry as well. So for today's call, for today's hour-long Q&A, we brought on Ryan Richman from the Washington Wizards. I'm personally pumped to have Ryan on because Ryan hired me in my first internship with the Washington Wizards out of college. We spent some time at the University of Maryland together, and yeah, pumped to have him on today. So Ryan, thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah, what's up, everyone? Thanks, Sam, for having me on, and it's great to see everyone. Some people I know, some people I don't, but looking forward to being here, and thank you.
Cool, man. And yeah, wanna really just open the floor initially to you, Ryan. I know you have your story of how you've grown into the industry. So can you, before we open the floor to everyone else to ask questions, I was hoping you can kind of walk us through your journey, where it started from, whether it's, some guys go back to talking about like their high school days or whatever it is, but curious where your journey was and how you navigated to get where you are today, as well as dive into what you're currently doing with the Wizards.
Yeah, so I guess the beautiful part about all this is everyone has their own journeys and uh, just interesting paths to get us all to these points. But for me, I obviously love playing. I played in high school and wanted to play college, and I went to a Division III school. And really, my freshman year didn't play much at all, like literally not at all. And I really didn't have the mental fortitude or really knowledge of like, hey, I'm going to grind this out. I'm going to work hard in the off season. I'm going to get extra work in after practices in my free time to like get into the rotation or even get better. Like I just didn't even know really how to do it. I wasn't motivated enough. And I basically just left Division III at Skidmore College and almost, I mean, in a lot of ways quit and went to a big school, Maryland, where I knew that I somehow wanted to stay involved in basketball, but just wanted a big school experience. I had some friends that went there from my hometown, and I found out that obviously like there was men's walk-on tryouts that I wanted to do, but it never really happened, never materialized. But one of my friends at the University of Wisconsin was a women's practice player. So he was telling me about that. So I inquired with the women's program at Maryland. And obviously they have a really prestigious program, and about just being a practice player. And I showed up one day, Danielle Hamerka, who, Sam, I think you know, but she was with the women's team. I think she's still in basketball, but I'm not sure. She was like the Dobo for the women's team. And she just had me like show up, and I played pickup one day and was fine and got approved to like be a women's practice player. And I had no idea what it was going to entail. I was just like, well, I want to stay involved in basketball. Let me stay in shape a little bit. Like, let me just like play basketball, which I love. And it just brought me down this journey of learning how to do player development, learning how to do scouting, learning how to do drills at practice. They'd throw me into drills as a player. I'd be coached like I was on the team. Like there were some coaches, one coach I'm with now, David Atkins, who's our director of player development, would like curse me out for like missing out a box out. And I'm like, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I'm a practice player. Like I didn't know that like anyone took it that seriously. So it was amazing though. It was like it was high level women's basketball, and it just really got me into like, oh yeah, like coaching would be really fun. Like it would be an amazing way to be able to have like a big school experience, but also be able to, like stay involved with something that I love, which is basketball. And it ended up being like the best thing I ever did was be a women's practice player. I think a lot of people want to be involved with the men's team because it's prestigious, it's on national TV, but the women's program is really where they just want help. Men's program, it's like very secretive, and I think that there's obviously more money, there's more glitz and glamour, so a lot of people want to go there, like I said. But the women's program, they really just they'll allow you to do anything. Like I was doing scouting reports, I was cutting film, I was doing all sorts of stuff, and it was just I was so fortunate to be in that situation to help propel me into a grad assistant job with the Maryland men's team after I graduated. And that was an incredible experience also. And then after those 2 years, I was able to jump in with the Wizards as an assistant video coordinator. And, it was like the happiest day of my life. I could have stayed at Maryland. Coach Turgeon offered me the video job there, and I would have made triple what I was making as an assistant video coordinator. Like I remember I was making $23,000 as an assistant video coordinator, and it was never about the money. Like my whole goal when I was little was I just wanted to get I wanted to get paid to go to NBA games. I remember seeing an article about being an advanced scout. Like I didn't even know what it was. I was like 15 years old. I was like, oh, this guy's an advanced scout. Like I didn't know what that meant. Now I do, but I was like, all right, I want to get paid to go to NBA games somehow, some way. That was my goal. That's my puppy in the background. So hopefully he doesn't poop on the floor. But we'll see. Here he is. That's Wnba. Wnba. Okay. So yeah. But yeah, that was my goal. Like I just wanted to get paid to go to NBA games. And I was an assistant video coordinator making $23,000 a year. Could have stayed, made triple or more as a video coordinator at Maryland, but I knew it's not what I wanted to do. So I took a risk because it was really what I wanted to do, was be in the NBA. And it was the best decision I made. Sometimes you have to forego short-term money for long-term, just like what you want in the long term, like long-term goals. Sometimes, the money in the short term is like very intriguing. And like when you're 23, like $75,000 out of college is pretty good as opposed to $23,000, and like, but I use that as motivation. Like I was like, I'm going to be making the lowest amount of anyone in this building in the NBA with the Wizards, but I'm going to like work the hardest. That was like my mindset. And, that kind of propelled me to where I am today. Last year, I was the head coach of the Capital City Go-Go, which is the Wizards G League team. I've been on the front of the bench with the Wizards 2 years ago. This year, I'm in the back of the bench. And then last year, I was with the Go-Go as the head coach, like I said. But it's been an amazing journey, and I'm just, so thankful. But that's kind of the, 3 to 5 minute spiel on where I'm at, where I've been.
Cool, man. No, that was awesome. I didn't realize you were somewhere before Maryland. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it actually motivates me today. It's like I didn't stick it out there, and it ended up being the best thing for me. But I wasn't ready maturity wise to like grind. Like, oh, okay, like I'll work these next few years and play as a junior or whatever. But like that's fine. It wasn't in the cards for me, but it ended up working out pretty well.
Cool.
So I had to like refine myself in basketball world, basically.
For sure. That's awesome, man. That was great. And so with that, Ryan, typically how we format these type of calls, it's fairly informal. I know everyone's kind of on mute right now, but the thought typically is, I think it's a majority GAs, student managers, younger individuals in the industry trying to figure out how to grow in it. So what we typically do is just anyone that has a question can either type it into the chat or just raise their hand, and we'll get them to introduce themselves, what team they're with right now, and yeah, ask any questions. Ask any questions your way.
Sam, you also had good questions in the email that I have answers to if you want to go through those at some point also.
Yeah. I mean, I can kick us off for one.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is, you've had this long journey, and it's going to continue to go, but looking back now, what do you wish you had known getting into the coaching profession that you might not have known at 19, 20 years old as a practice player for the Maryland women's team?
Yeah. I would just say that I know it gets overblown. I just think how much relationships matter in the business. I know it's like it gets overblown, but some of the relationships that you don't think matter actually do matter. So like players and coaches, of course, are important, but equipment managers, PR directors, if you guys are in colleges, like you said, there's a lot of GAs here, like your academic advisor, like the one who takes care of the players, like all those relationships really do matter. Sam was with the Wizards, and like we had a bunch of equipment managers, we had a bunch of PR directors, like they know so many people throughout the business, and they really create like your story in a lot of ways, because they're going to tell the people around the league like who you are. Like we had someone we worked with who like knew everyone in the league, and like they're going to tell, like, if you're a good person, if you work hard, like that's going to be known. So it gets overblown sometimes, like relationships, but it's like real genuine relationships and just treating everyone the right way, because you don't know who's going to be able to help you down the line. It's really not about that. It's just about being like authentic to like who you are as a person. Like if you're an asshole, like be an asshole every day. Right? Like I can respect someone who's an asshole every day. Like, but if you're just going to like fluctuate, then people, like, it's hard to gravitate towards that, So I would just say like be who you are every day, and like make sure you're cultivating like relationships that are important. And don't just like try and work with the best player or try to be buddy with the assistant coach who's going to get a head job next year. It's not about that. Like that's not going to put you like above anyone else.
Makes sense. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to jump in.
Sam, I would actually, your second question though, sorry, because I prepared these answers, and actually I think it's important. The second one is really important.
The one about navigating through the industry?
And just, how can someone stay connected?
Yeah. I guess the question that I typically have is, right, how do people stay connected and navigate through that industry because of how spread out everyone is? I mean, we have people on the call that are on the East Coast, on the West Coast. You're kind of in your own bubble, but what's the best way of staying connected with people?
So like, I'll give an example of just, first of all, like Speakeasy, I think could really help. It would have helped me growing up in the business. Even today, like it could be helpful for me. Just like you don't have a ton of time to just, oh my gosh, he's going crazy. You don't have a ton of.
Jake, would you mind muting yourself, Jake Cohen?
I think it's me. I don't think it's Jake.
Oh, is it? All right. It's just.
But yeah, so and I would just say Speakeasy is like a really good networking tool that could be really helpful moving forward. But the other thing I would say is like bring value with your connections. For example, something I hate is when guys are like, hey, they email you out of the blue, say, hey, I want to pick your brain on this. It's like, no, you don't. You want a job. Like no one, that line is like bullshit, like in a lot of ways. So like bring value. Like my thing is bring value with your connections. So like Andrew Wade, who's on the call, who was assistant coach for the Go-Go and works with the Mystics and the Wizards also, like Andrew Wade is a great example of someone who he's gonna send you an email like or a text. He's like, oh, I saw this ATO last night from Frank Vogel that I loved. Like, what do you think? Like you're bringing value to the connection. And I think that's so important, as opposed to just like, hey, like, let me like talk. What do you think about this? Like, no, like you bring value to your connections, and the connections will bring value to you. So I just wanted to say that, because I think being proactive will put you in a better place than not.
Oh, that's helpful. Appreciate that, man. Cool. I'll let anybody else have any questions, want to jump in? If not, I can keep rolling. All right, nobody has any questions. We're all good. All right. I see Matt Cotton. You want to introduce yourself, what school you're with? Just introduce yourself and ask the question.
Sure. So my name is Matt Cotton. I'm a graduate video intern with the University of Florida women's basketball program. And my question is who throughout your coaching career growing up would you say are like top three had the biggest influence on how you got to being with the Washington organization?
Great question. I would say David Atkins, who's with us now, he really helped me just teach me how to do player development. Learned like how to be tough on players, hold players accountable. We used to do tons of morning workouts at the University of Maryland with local professionals and players, just like learning really like how to work a professional basketball player out. A quick story, like he was a women's assistant coach, and Gravis Vasquez was preparing for the NBA draft, and I was like, hey, like I want to help out more than I help out now. Like I'm just a women's practice player. Yeah, I'm cutting film, learning sports code and all that. And he's like, all right, we're working out Gravis like for the next 4 weeks at 6 a.m. every day. I'm like a college kid. Like he doesn't think I'm gonna like be there at 6 a.m. every day and like help him workouts. He's like, this kid's probably partying, like hanging out. Like he like said it half joking, and like he tells a story. He's like, he's never left since then. He never left, and like just he really helped me. I would say Brenda Freeze really helped me too. Just she was the women's coach at Maryland, and just like, she allowed me to be a member of her program. She allowed me to help her program and never put restrictions on me. And then, Coach Turgeon too, I was a GA for him, and he just let me do so much. And I just think as a grad assistant, when you're in college, you get to do so much. I love that experience. Like as much as it's silly, like sometimes, I was as a grad assistant, like booking hotels and like ordering food for the team. And like, as much as it's kind of like stupid, it matters, like you have to like have the food there on time. Like Coach Turgeon wanted the appetizers on the table when we got there. I'm like 22 years old. I'm talking to guys like 50-year-old men and women at restaurants. I'm trying to like massage like the idea of, hey, we need this on the table when we get there. Like we got all these guys. I'm working with a budget. Like all those things like help me out today, because you have to learn how to work with people. And I think all those three people that I mentioned were really helpful getting to where I am right now.
Well, man. Roman, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
From France. I'm a video analyst for the first division team. So I had a question about something that's not related to basketball purely, because we tackled other subjects over the previous calls, and it's about what jobs can you find that's not related to basketball when you cannot have a paid opportunity with a team. What if you hadn't had the opportunity with the Wizards after your experience at Maryland? What would you have looked for at that time? Would you have looked for insurance or sales? What type of jobs can be most helpful to make that bridge between the volunteer experience and the paid one with a professional team?
So let me make sure I understand. So basically, if I wasn't able to get a job with the NBA, what would I be doing? In the interim, or just like generally speaking, what would I do?
Generally speaking, because we need the money to live just for food and housing and everything, but we want to make the most of every experience you can get. So
It's a great
what would you
question.
say is the best?
I would love, I mean, personally, I think anything with sales, I think you have to, every day as a head coach, you have to sell your team on like a narrative. You have to sell your story every day. And I think sales is really important. I mean, in a lot of ways, we are sales men and women when we're coaches. Like you're selling your vision, you're selling what you believe in, and you're really trying to just create an environment where people buy into you. And I think there's really no better way than sales in that regard, Roman. So thank you for that question. I never really thought of it that way.
Thank you for your answer.
And I'm going to jump into there too, just because I think that's a really good question, Roman. And I've been on the coaching side, and now I'm actually working in technology and sales. And I think it's 100% like selling and coaching really do go hand in hand, because just like I have to influence someone I was working for Synergy Sports, and like why someone needs to use Synergy Sports in a certain way. It's all that communication skill, because a coach is also, if Ryan's working with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, he has to learn how to communicate in the right way to make sure that Russell Westbrook's not like, well, Ryan, why should I listen to you? He has to learn how to really pitch himself and sell why his ideas are important. So I actually agree a lot with the sales and coaching going hand in hand. And then just to double down on what Ryan said is, so I actually got out of coaching and into sports technology sales. And I think that's an interesting route to go, because although I wasn't technically on the floor anymore, I was still building my network of people in sport. I was selling Synergy Sports, which I imagine almost everyone on here knows what Synergy Sports is. So that gave me conversations to go to the Final Four. Everyone knew, oh, Sam used to coach and now he's with Synergy Sports. If I had interest in maybe getting back in, then now I had my Rolodex of contacts had grown just from having those conversations. So whether it's coaching or selling in the sports tech space, I think are both really valuable things, especially when you're trying to break in. Hope that was helpful. I see Will's hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, I'm a manager at BC right now, and I was just wondering if you thought that playing experience or do you think playing experience is more valuable in the college ranks or the NBA ranks? So like whether that be high school, college, or maybe even professional, like how does that play a role in like determining who gets different positions in the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, first of all, when's your first game? Uncle Scotty's finally a head coach.
Dude, he's talking in the background right now. I was trying to get him to quiet down a little bit, but
when is your first game though with him? Has he coached a game yet? I know you guys got postponed.
No, we have Notre Dame on Saturday, 2:00.
Awesome. All right, cool. I'm excited for him. He's one of the funniest and most passionate dudes I've ever been around in this business. But yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think in the NBA in particular, former players obviously get the benefit of the doubt earlier, like right away. But I would say that it doesn't really totally mean anything, because at the end of the day, like if you can help the players, you can help the players. Like they'll listen to people that can help them. And I think that that's the most important part. Like if you can help them and they know it, then they'll gravitate towards you. Now, like, listen, like I always view our job as like you have to stay in shape. Like you have to be able to dribble a ball. Like you have to be able, you can't, in my opinion, you can't just like, I don't think you can like let yourself go and like not be in shape and not be able to like handle the ball in drills. Like I'm not saying you have to be like, 5-star basketball, like dribbling the ball, like, like Frank Vogel or whatever was like spitting the ball on a toothbrush. I think that was Frank Vogel. Like, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I think you have to like keep some semblance of like being able to dribble, being able to move, being able to guard guys, like that type of thing, or women, either way, like if you're in practice and you're helping out. So prior experience to me doesn't mean anything if you can show, one, that you're competent on the court, and two, that like what you're talking about. If you know what you're talking about, I've seen coaches in all shapes and sizes help players, and players rely on them, regardless of if they played or not in the NBA. Hope that answers your question.
Definitely. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you just got me thinking though. Like, I do view, like I mentioned it in passing. Like, I view staying in shape. I view like that's part of our job. Like, we can't ask the players to, eat right, get your sleep, like take care of your body if we're not doing it. Like, I never believe in that, and I hope that you guys take that seriously too, because and women, I think that's important for our job. I really do.
And I actually have a follow up off of that, Ryan. Right, so I didn't play college hoops, but I'd be curious, like when, and I'm sure you dealt with it too. Coaches, when I was applying to things, they would just say, "Hey, Sam, we want a former player." What do you recommend if a coach were to say that? And I mean, for me, it just fueled the fire in my mind to try to push harder. But what would you say if a coach said, "Hey, Sam, we just want a player. Hey, Ryan, we want a former NBA player." What's your thought? What's your philosophy on that?
Sam, is this for me?
Yeah, for you. Did you hear
Yeah,
that?
I mean, obviously, like if they say that, you can't. If that's what they want, that's what they want, right? Like, I mean, there's some times where there's low minute workouts, and I still have to play with the guys. I'm like, I'm not a former NBA player by any means, but I'm not totally useless on the court. So like, if that's what a coach wants, that's what he wants. I can't really, there's nothing really to say about that other than like go, like as Scotty says, like our head coach Scott Brooks said, you should have practiced your jump shot more. Like, it's not my fault you didn't practice your jump shot more, But he's also open to people like who aren't former players, like having an opinion, having a voice. Again, it's all about your confidence. If you weren't former players, you have to separate yourself in different ways. You have to be more prepared. You have to be like there earlier and stay later. And you just have to separate in different ways. It's not better or worse. Like, there's plenty of, if you go through the list of NBA coaches, head coaches right now that didn't play in the league, like I think I did it this summer during the quarantine on one of the days. It's like the numbers, I think it's half or more. So it's not like it's impossible by any stretch of the imagination. So players grab it. If you can help the player in practice, you're golden. If you can help the player in games, now you're really talking. So that takes time, but if you study your craft, you'll have no problem doing it.
Cool. Thanks, man. I see Daniel Baumstein. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Hi, Ryan. My name's Daniel Baumstein. I'm a senior at Indiana, and I was interning with Event Ops for my sophomore year. I'm actually from the Bethesda, Maryland area, and familiar and DC fan. So this question is kind of about developing a strong locker room culture in a professional environment. Because I feel like there's a lot of talk, especially with the media, about like negative locker rooms and like players not getting along. What do you think from your experience during your time, both in Maryland and with the Go-Go and the Wizards, kind of helps bring that together and creates that winning like cultural environment?
Yeah, I think I really think it's funny you asked that question. It's a great question. One that we could probably talk about for hours. And I think the key is really alignment from the coaches, from the players, from the front office. When you're talking about an NBA organization, I was texting with two of our front office guys last night, and we were talking about this exactly. And my big thing is that I believe that players hold players accountable way better than coaches can, or way better than front office can. So I do think that it's not to like alleviate us from the responsibility, but I do believe that if you can have players lead players, then you're in for more success from an accountability, a culture, environment standpoint. Really, that's like our best teams that I've been with the Wizards for 8 years. Our best teams were player led. Like Paul Pierce, Russell Westbrook is probably the best leader I've seen, just from like I do things the right way, and I'm going to like practice what I preach in a lot of ways. And and like, he calls guys out, like, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, like, that's the reality of it. But he's a 9-time All-Star. He's going to go down as one of the, best, I don't know, 50 players, 70 players to ever play. Probably 50, top 50 player ever. I mean, he's the best rebounding guard of all time, basically. So, like, I do think if you can get players to hold each other accountable, you're in position to be successful. But that's not to say, like, as a head coach or assistant coach, you can't do it either, because that's critical too. It's really accountability. What I learned as a head coach is everyone wants to be treated in a similar manner. And as soon as you bend the rules for someone, it's hard. It's hard to go back on it. So really, like, being strict and being diligent with your accountability early is really important in a season.
Thank you. That was awesome.
What do you think, Daniel? What would be your
I mean, as a Wizards fan, that kind of got me fired up hearing about Russ, because I feel like he gets a lot of negative flack. I think it takes the person to lead by example. I mean, that's how I've always felt, and that's how I always, try to do the things with the different organizations I'm involved with. Because I mean, talk is cheap. That's what they always say, right? And so I think action is always important and is the most important thing. And it's an interesting perspective for you from, like, coaches and front office, kind of being with players who are as, renowned as different stars on the Wizards and different players. But yeah, I think you're right. I just think it's, like, by example, whether that's from the front office or the coach or the player. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah, thank you. I also think, like, it's holistic, like, it's everything. It's like, it's got to be in alignment, like I said earlier, but it's got to be everything. Like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's just how you show up on time and early to your weight room sessions, how you show up to your, like, massage therapist, like, just all those things I think add up.
Cool. Good stuff, Daniel. Andrew, I know you mentioned to me that you have a question. You want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's up, Coach? My name is Andrew Ford. I'm a graduate assistant at Florida men's basketball. I had a quick question, just kind of about how skills that you might see in younger players translate, like what you see in, like, a high school, even college player. Like, what are the most common traits, even personality traits, not even like their scoring ability or whatever. What do you see most translate besides the common answers of hard work and, like, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think when you're talking about young players, I think their ability to use, I mean, we're talking about, like, technical skills right now. I would say to use their offhand, I think is huge. Like, how well can you go away from your strong hand? Can you make passes with both hands? Like, can you dribble and pass? And I say shoot, like, can you make layups with your offhand? Can you make floaters? Can you make reads with your offhand? I think from a technical standpoint, that skill is important when you're talking about recruiting and you're talking about, like, taking the next step. But then I think from just, like, a personality standpoint, it's really, like, are you rushing to help your teammate up? Are you, like, we used to practice that. I know it sounds stupid, but we used to practice like players on the floor, like, running to help them up. Like, that's, like, really one of the only ways that you can show connectivity on the court, besides, like, the normal, like, extra pass, good to great passes, like, that type of stuff. Like, if you go run and help your teammate up, like, to me, that shows that you give a shit about something other than yourself. And it sounds crazy, it sounds stupid, but we used to practice it. Like, we used to enforce it, and guys, like, did it a lot, and I thought it helped our connectivity.
Are you talking about at the Wizards or at Maryland?
No, we used to do that a lot with the Go-Go when I was a head coach last year with the
Okay.
G League team. Like, we used to practice it all the time. So I'm a believer in that. I'm a huge believer. I don't think that anyone is, like, better than the team to do that. I just don't believe in it. So, like, when you're recruiting or you're scouting, to me, that just shows character, shows, like, unselfishness. Do you have any that you want to share with us?
No, I had heard like our coach, I don't know if you know Mike White at all. He's our head coach. He talks a lot. He gets really everybody on our team. He talks about rebounding is the most translatable trait that he said for bigs, guards, anybody. I know that's kind of obviously a broad, like that obviously makes sense, but that was just one thing that I had heard. So it kind of got me thinking about what other things are kind of the most translatable, I guess, if that's a word.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, I've heard that for sure. I think free throw percentage too. Like free throw percentage is an indicator of being a good shooter. And then, like, I think obviously like high turnovers probably translate too.
Okay.
Like in a negative way, right? Like if you're a high turnover person, you probably are going to be a high turnover pro or
Right.
bad decision maker basically. But yeah, I've heard rebounding also.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
I actually had one more, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Just to kind of go back to what you were saying, the last question. I know you kind of approached it from a player's perspective, like what a player does in the locker room. How do you think a coach can, like, sometimes if you have a locker room that players don't step up, like what ways as a coach can you encourage it or help that culture or help a player to step up? Is there a time when you are in a locker room when a coach is like completely, out of the way because one player kind of in a good way has taken control of the culture?
You kind of cut out right at the end. What was the second part of your question? Sorry, I like this question. Let's go on with it. But what was the second part?
It was just so like first time you just kind of approach it from player perspective, but as a coach, like if you see that a player has taken control of your culture in a good way, like is there a time when you step out and don't have any impact kind of and just kind of let it ride? And then when's the time when when you should step in and try and fix something that you don't like?
Yeah. I think if a player has good control over the group, I think you just kind of let it ride and just kind of try and develop a relationship with that player and really empower that player. But I think at times when, like, I always made it a point as the go-go head coach, and this is just doing research into the season, especially on the G League level. Like the big thing was you can't let the NBA players come to the G League and do whatever the fuck they want to do. Like, sorry for swearing, but like that's just the bottom line. Like, if you let them just take shitty shots and come to practice and fuck around and not play hard. So like, my thing was like, I'm not saying I'm just like this tough, hard. Like, that's not necessarily my personality. Even though going into the season, that was something that I worked on, was being a lot more firm, fair but firm, more so. Like, I would make it a point to get on them more than anyone, just because you have to. Like, the G League can go crazy if you don't get on your best players, and typically your best players are going to be your NBA guys or guys that have had NBA experience. And just you just have to. Like, if you can't get on your NBA guy, there's the stories of Greg Popovich and him, telling Tim Duncan before a film session, like, I'm going to get on you, like, in private, like, I'm going to get on you in this film session. You got to take it, because if you take it, everyone else can take it. And that's kind of like, in a way, of what I believe in, just, with your best players in particular. So I think that you have to help the culture if the culture like needs your help and it's not player led. And a lot of it is just literally, I think guys just want to see other players get called out. Like, really is the bottom line. Like, we're the same way. We all want to be treated the same way. We treat everyone fair, not equal. Like, I'm not treating Russell and Brad don't get the same treatment as Garrison Matthews. It's just the reality of it. I love Garrison. Garison's on our G League team. He's one of the hardest playing dudes I've ever been around. But we're not going to treat him the same way we treat Brad and Russ. It doesn't make sense. It's not advantageous to the group. Like, they're not the same people. Everyone wants to be treated the same, but it's not realistic. You have to treat everyone fair, but not everyone gets treated the same way.
Cool. Naomi, I saw you had your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
And then the flip side of that is like, I would just say this, sorry, Naomi, is like, because that just got me going. Like if someone's going to complain about it, it's like, all right, well, then you put up a triple double every single night. And then maybe you get treated differently too, right? Like the NBA is a star driven league. Role players make money, but stars run the league. So if you can do what stars can do, all right, now we're talking. But if you can't, and you're a role player, you have to be a star in your role, you know. And I think that's obviously important moving forward.
Love it. Naomi, you want to jump in? That was awesome.
Hello, I'm Naomi. I'm from New Mexico State women's basketball. I'm a manager and I also shadow the basketball operations. I know you had said that you were a head coach for the G League, and currently right now you're an assistant coach. Have you ever taken into consideration of becoming a head coach for the Wizards?
I mean, I think everyone, you know, not everyone, but a lot of people want to be a head coach. So, you know, I think our head coach does a great job. Scott Brooks, he's a mentor of mine. Like he does a great job. So I don't really think about being the head coach of the Wizards because that's what he does. So I just try and, you know, similar to what I said about the role player, like I just try and star in my role. I know it sounds cliche, but that's all we can do as assistants and just try and be proactive. Like try and help him. Like, cause I've been a head coach. Being a head coach is hard. Like I know Rob Eason's on the call. He's an incredible coach. He's a mentor of mine. He's been a head coach. Like all of us assistants, all of us grad assistants, we all think we know the answers. I promise you don't, because I've been in your shoes. It's hard being a head coach. Hard. I'm not saying not. I'm saying I hope everyone in this room does it. If that's your goal, it's not everyone's goal to be a head coach, but it's the most rewarding. It's the most fruitful job you can ever have because it teaches you. Like last year, and I only coached 43 games, so I'm not like saying it as this guy that's coached like thousands of games and I know I have all the answers. I don't, but it was the most illuminating, best experience I've ever had. I learned more about myself. I know, again, it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. You learn more about yourself, leadership styles. Like when you lose by fucking 40 points against Maine at 11 a.m., like what do? You know, like it's easy when you win, but like when you get blasted, like what do you do? You know, like the next day of practice, how are you? And the first 10 games, I was a mess when we lost. I didn't sleep ever when we lost. When we win, I feel like I know everything. When you lose, you're miserable. It's hard, but you have to like, you can't let it change your day-to-day life. And like, I don't really think about anyone else's job but my own, if that makes sense, Naomi.
Yeah, that does.
And I think that's important. Like, you know, like we have to just be at the job we're at and try and make it the best you can in that moment. And just like try and be proactive to the people that are like relying on you to be proactive. Because how many people go to their head coach or an assistant coach and be like, hey, like I was just watching this film and I saw this, I thought it'd be great. Or are you trying to take the credit? Are you trying to like go right to the player and be like, hey, like look at this. Like one of my quotes that from David Atkins is when he told me as a young coach, he said, get water, get coffee, and shut the fuck up. And that was, Sam asked me, what's the most important lesson you've learned? And that's like, that was a great lesson. Like, you don't want to hear it as a young coach. You think you have all the answers, but you really like, unless you've made it, if you've called a timeout and made substitutions, you really don't know what it's like to be in that seat. And it's indescribable. I can't prepare anyone for it because the only experience you have is experience. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just worry about my own job. I have enough to worry about with my own job.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But thank you.
And I had another question, if you didn't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I know you said you were with the women's team for Maryland. Why do you think a lot of guys underestimate women's sports? Like, I know that the WNBA, it's not exactly up there when people talk about it in comparison to the NBA. So I wanted to know like why people don't take the WNBA as seriously as they do with the NBA.
love this question because they're stupid men, probably. Like, honestly, I mean, unless you've played against the best women's players, like, I tell people all the time that make fun of women's basketball. It's like, all right, you go play against Diana Taurasi, you go play against Elena Delle Donne, and then you come back to me and tell me if you don't think that women deserve the same credit. Like, women are so amazing in general, but at basketball, and I think it's actually starting, and it's a shame that obviously everything that happened with Kobe is so sad, but I think one of the biggest takeaways that happened with him is he was becoming such a pioneer for women's basketball because of his daughter, and like the fact that he died being a pioneer for women's basketball, he was going to grow into such an incredible force. And I think like one of his amazing legacies that he left behind is his respect and love and admiration for women's basketball. And I think that other NBA players saw that and they're going to move forward and carry that on, because again, if you think you're better than it's always those like Twitter warriors that think they're better than WNBA players. Like, I'd love to see them play one-on-one and just get their ass busted, because that's exactly what would happen. And not even the best. Like I help practice. Like, I'm a practice player for the women's team with WNBA team when I'm around and I have time to do it, just because I like staying in shape and I like just playing basketball. And they're so much better than me. It's not even close.
Who's your favorite team?
WNBA?
Yes.
I mean, I love the Mystics. They play incredible basketball. If you get to watch them, they play.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Wade's an assistant coach for them. He's on this. He's assistant coach he was assistant coach last year for the Go, but they're so fun to watch, and yeah, they're great.
And
very well coached.
And I'll double down on that, Ryan. That was actually my first job out of Maryland, was like a video coordinator job with the Washington Mystics. So at the time, I hadn't known anything about the WNBA, but when I got there, I was like, holy shit, these girls are good. And oftentimes, to me, the X's and O's oftentimes were better because not one girl is, that much bigger than everybody else. So that their X's and O's to me were almost better. So I think that's an awesome launching pad also to get into the industry. So I'm going to jump to, I see Steven has been messaging me a question. Do you want to jump in, introduce yourself? Ryan, are you good for a bit over? I know we're almost at 8. Are you all right on time? Cool, man. Steven, so do you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, how's it going? My name's Steven Sprayregan. I'm a graduate assistant at Seattle University. And I kind of have like a 2-part question. One of them being, what was like the biggest adjustment that you had to make from being like an assistant coach to being a head coach? And then looking back now, like what could you have done, or what could have helped you, like when you were a GA, when you were a video coordinator, to be in that role as a head coach and like be in charge of so much?
Yeah, I would say the biggest adjustment, great question, first of all, Steven, nice to meet you. I would say the biggest adjustment is not knowing that you can't care about being liked as a head coach. As a head coach, you're not going to be liked ever. There's going to be 3 or 4 guys that hate you every single day you walk through the door because you're ruining their career, you're not playing them, but you have to do what's best for the team. And if you care about being liked, then you just have no chance of being successful as a head coach. And it's easier said than done. Some people are really good at it. Some people aren't. That was definitely an adjustment for me, because as an assistant coach, as a grad assistant, like you're the guy that doesn't hold anyone accountable really. You're friends with everyone, you're laughing, you're smiling, everything's good. But as a head coach, like you have to hold guys accountable. You have to do what's best for the team, and you can't care about anyone's feelings in a lot of ways. So hope that answers your question. As a grad assistant, one thing I tried to do was, or video coordinator, to prepare myself for a head coaching job, was just ATOs, end of games, like being prepared to draw up plays. Hold on, let me move room. For me, it was just being prepared to draw up plays. I'll never underestimate, again, getting back to Will's question, Like never underestimate your ability to gain credibility with your players by like drawing up a great ATO and drawing up a great end of game. Like I think that stuff matters. Some people will say it's overrated. Some people may not think it matters as much. I'm a firm believer that you can really gain credibility through your knowledge. And one way to do it is just by like diving into the X's and O's. So that's not an issue. Like if you can't draw up a play, or if Steven, if you're a great 3-point shooter and I can't get you an open shot after a timeout, like shame on us all as coaches. And that's one way. Like Randy Whitman was amazing at ATOs. People probably don't even know him very well. Incredible at ATOs. And Daniel, because you're from the area. I'll never forget Drew Gooden, who's a veteran player. When we had him, he was a complete vet. And he would, Randy would draw up a play. We'd get an open shot and we'd miss. And Drew would point at the bench, or he'd look at the bench. He'd be like, great play, Whit. That's a great play right there. And just like that little bit of credibility. Like, so as a GA, as a video coordinator, like do your own work at getting really good on the board. Like if you're a GA and you care about being better at X's and O's and all that, like you should travel with a board. If you don't travel with a board, shame on you. How are you going to get better at drawing up a play if you don't draw plays up every day? So that's one thing I'd challenge you all with is you should be drawing plays up every day. And it's not like you don't have to go crazy, but if you do 5 minutes a day, like I don't know if you guys signed up for the James Clear newsletter, but he had a great quote today. The James Clear, he wrote Atomic Habits. His quote today was, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every single hour. So lay a brick every hour.
Love that. Cool, man.
What was that newsletter too, by the way?
It's called just go to like James Clear. It's like 321 newsletter. Atomic Habits was a really good book that he wrote. Definitely worth reading. But the newsletter is amazing. Comes out every Thursday, and it's short, but it's awesome.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Jacob, you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, my name's Jacob Egelhoff. I'm a student manager at Ohio State, and my question was to you, expanding off of what you were talking about earlier of maintaining your network and relationships, is how would you say is the best way to begin building that network with people from outside of the program you're associated with? Like, is there a good way to sell yourself or to just really reach out and begin doing that groundwork?
Yeah, Jacob, it's a good question. I mean, it's hard now with COVID, but I still think I'll go back to what I said earlier, and it's about bringing value in your reach outs. Like, how are you, like if I'm a assistant coach for the Wizards, which I am, like, how are you, like, if you email me, let's say I get 50 emails every 3 months. If I get 50 emails every 3 months, how are you differentiating yourself from those other 49 people? Right. So for me, it's like, it's easy to get email addresses and whatever, like for G League people, I think you should definitely look G League. You should definitely look college. You should look NBA. But like, if you're sending out emails every week, which you should, like, how are they different? Like, what are you doing to show that they're different? Like, I think it's like, hey, I put this edit together and like, what do you think? Or, hey, like, Marcus Smart is great with his hands and pick and roll defense. Like, what do you think about this edit I made for one of our players? Or just like something different, something that's like, yo, I'm working, I'm doing stuff. I have my shit together, not just like, hey, can I have a job? Like, no one cares about us. They don't. Like, no one gives a shit about us. They really don't. So like, you have to differentiate yourself. And like, if you don't know how, ask Andrew Wade. He knows how. Like, one of the best coach, like young coaches I've been around, just in terms of like, just he's on this chat right now. Just, he's awesome. Like I didn't even ask him this year. Last year he was on our staff. I had him put together because I wasn't able to watch NBA games. So I had him put together like, just go through these 6 teams, go through their ATOs every 2 weeks and give me an edit of all their ATOs so I get some ideas. And like, he got furloughed. He's coming back, but he did it this year. Like, I didn't ask him to do it, but he's doing it this year and I use it. Like, it's helpful for me. So like, again, like he's being proactive and that's why he's going to be successful. Like, who do you work for? Ohio? I see Ohio. So like, how are you being proactive for your head coach and assistant coach?
Just the same thing, kind of cutting out plays for every opponent we're going to face in the rest of the schedule.
I love
It's
it.
all I'm really allowed to do at the time.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Good job. Like, now can you throw in like one extra thing every week? Can you throw, hey, I saw this NBA set, maybe it'll work for our shooting guard. Like, what do you think? Take a look. He may not look at it, but you did it, and I think that matters. I really do.
Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Jacob. Hopefully that helps. If you need any ideas, I'll be more than happy to help you with those. Just let me know.
Cool, good stuff. And Matt,
I'm going to drop some edits in the chat too that I made like over the bubble and try to be proactive, take my own advice and be a little proactive myself. But
I think I got that from you, Ryan. I think, Ryan, when I was interning with you guys, it was like what I did was it was every game, if the game was within 8 points at the end, it was literally pull every single play into an end of game ATO doc. And yeah, I mean things like that to differentiate that other people might not be doing. But yeah. Matt, you want to jump in?
So my question is, with you being a video coordinator and a video GA with the Maryland basketball program, how have you seen scouting and video change over time? And how have you seen the importance of video and scouting kind of grow as well?
Awesome question. I just think there's more tools. Like there's Second Spectrum now. Like, I mean, Sam can talk about probably all the tools there are, but there's so many different tools that I think there's more information. So it's important to whittle down the information as best as possible. I mean, I'll be honest, like in the NBA, there's so many games. I feel like scouting is very overrated. Every team basically switches 1 through 4 right now. So it's like, scouting is important, but we overrate the shit out of scouting and underrate personnel tendencies, in my opinion. Like we do personnel a lot, but we have a lot of young players. We have a lot of international players. Personnel is so much more important than, Florida State runs, wedge roll and they run 2-out horns. Like the players don't remember that shit. Like they don't remember that, but they do know if number 12 is a right-hand driver or a left-hand driver, like that could actually help. But along those same lines, I just think like the best coaches I've been around, they know every single play that the other team is going to run. So like Chad Iskey, who's with Charlotte right now, like he's one of the best coaches I've been around. He's an assistant coach of probably no one here besides Sam, because I think Sam, did you work with him, Sam?
Who was that? I missed that.
Chad Iskey. No, Chad Iskey, no.
So
no. Like he would Orlando would make a call and Chad would stand up and yell, "Why pin down that way? Like pick and roll coming here." And like it would help the guys really quickly. And like, I think differentiating yourself in that way too, from a scouting standpoint, is really important. But with more information, like Matthew, to answer your question, I think you have to keep it even simpler for the players. Like they need it simple. They need it distilled down. Is 12 a shooter or a non-shooter? Can he or she drive? Like, can he drive right, drive left? Are they pump fake? Are they pump fake guys? Are they pump fake? Like what do they like to do? Keep it simple and specific, and then move on. Because with more information becomes more confusion too. Like one of my other mentors, Ed Tapscott, used to say, "The more they're thinking, the more they're stinking." So, goes to show you, like let players play instinctually. Like give them the bones, give them like what can help them, but don't overcomplicate shit. Like it's basketball. We're not fucking like trying to put someone on the moon here. Like, leave that shit to Elon Musk. He'll figure it out for us.
Exactly. Cool, man. Anybody else before we wrap this thing up? Any other questions? Ryan, I might ask one more. I always looked to you on this when I was with the Wizards, and I tried to take it along when I got to Orlando and then Nevada. But you always, I think, as like a young person in the industry, it's not always. It's important to have a relationship with the players, and it's also important to have that relationship so they respect you and listen to you and want to do workouts with you. What tidbits or advice could you give this group as they want to run workouts themselves, or they want to run video sessions one-on-one with guys? What advice can you give them to gain that respect from the players as they grow in the industry?
I just think the main thing is like, don't try and be their friend. Like, we're not like, in college it might be a little different, but like, you're not trying to be friends. Like, there's some extenuating circumstances. I mean, college can be different. I understand that. I was in college. You're living with them. It's a little different, but like, you got to keep, if you want to be looked at as a coach, you have to keep that level of professionalism, in my opinion. Like you don't, to me, you don't go out with players. You don't like, I don't know, like, there's so many gray areas. Like, if you're going out with players, you're not going to be looked at as like a respected coach. It's just, in my opinion, some guys can get away with it. I don't think you can. I think you just, Sam, like, to further answer your question, I think you have to be over prepared. You have to help them. Like, they need to know that you care about them. Like, there's a difference between being friends with a guy and like, when I was a young coach, I used to do stupid shit. Like, I would invite guys to frat parties because I thought it was cool. Like, that's not cool. Like, that puts you in a bad, like, that kills the respect factor. Like, no, you're there to help them be a better player, and you're there to like actually help them be better. And in the end, they're going to respect you more because you've helped them along the way. So I think that's really important. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think it's a Dr. Seuss line. I may have fucked this up, but I wrote it down because one of Sam's questions. It's like, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I'm sure everyone here has heard that, right? Raise your hand if you've heard that. Like, no one cares. Like, if you don't know, like I work with Garrison, Mo, and Alex. Like, if I don't know like how their brother's doing, how their siblings are doing, like how their nieces and nephews are, like what's going on in their life, like, they don't give a shit about me. Like, you need to like care about them. Ask them about their life outside of basketball. You don't want a transactional relationship. Like, there's some coaches I've been around that are only talk to the guys about basketball. Like, no. Why? That's just showing that the only relationship you care about is them as a player. Like, you have to care about the human being first, and then the player stuff will follow. And I think that's important, just being consistent. It's a great question, Sam. I'm still trying to figure it out, much like everything else.
Man. Cool. Now, Matt, did you have another question to follow up with? You're on mute.
Back to my own video question. So, like, going off of scouting, so like, say you're not, I know this might be hard to imagine, but like, say you're not watching a game to like scout it intentionally. Like, what things are you looking for? Like, let's say I'm watching some random game because I just want to watch it, but I want to be watching it with intent. Like, what are some basic things you could be looking for that you think could translate from game to game?
That is a fantastic question, Matt. I love that question because sometimes it's like, when you get the coaching lens, it's hard to watch it for fun. But there's some little thing, like, once you become a head coach, you're going to watch it differently. You're going to watch, but like, one thing I could say, and I'll elaborate a little bit, but like rotations, I think, like, watching when teams sub, who's playing with who. So like Utah, for example, the Jazz, they're trying to play Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, and Jordan Clarkson. They're trying to play at least two out of the three. Let's just say they're trying to play two out of the three of them at all times. Like, right? So like they're trying to stagger those 3 guys and have 2 of them on the court all the time. So like just watching that, like how does Quinn do that? Like what happens if one of them gets in foul trouble? Like what does he do? You know, like I think rotations is big. So substitution patterns along those lines. I think like try and focus, and something I look to get better at is just not watching the ball all the time. And I think that's important when you're watching film. Like, don't just watch the ball, or you're watching a game. Don't just watch the ball. Like, watch the weak side. Like, what's the low man doing on the weak side? Like, what's the guy in the corner doing opposite the ball? Like, try and see everything. Try and see all 10 guys as much as you can. It's hard. It's really hard. I still struggle with it, but I think then you can train. How many of you are at the game live watching the game? Show of hands. Like not in the back coding the game. Like how many of you are there live? Okay. That also is a next step level. That's like a next level thing, is like being able to, and I just got good at it these past 2 years. Like after the head coaching job, really this past year, is being able to like see something live and like in the huddle, go up to a guy, be like, yo, the low man's there. Like you can't drive it. The low man's always there early. Like find a cut, you know, like how can you help someone, a player in the game, and for them to really look at you, be like, oh shit, yeah, you're right about that. And then like in the next time out, come up to you, be like, yo, what do you see? You know, like that is when you get to another level of relationship building, of showing your credibility, of like that's like a whole nother level that I'm excited. Like you all are going to get to it. It takes time. You might be there now. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Like out of those people that are there at games, like how many of you feel confident that you can correct a player in game, like during a timeout, and like tell them something and be real? Like if you feel confident about it, like, does that anyone? You got a good group of people here, Sam, because you guys are honest. Like it's hard. That shit's hard to do. I've been watching NBA games live because it's different from film, Matt. Like film is great, but like film, we can pause, we can fast forward, we can rewind, we can do all the stuff that we love to do. But when you're live, try and focus on that. Like next time you're at a game, Jake and Jacob and Will, I forget who else is live there, but like try and focus on like, damn, like maybe I'm looking at like the weak side defense, or maybe I'm looking at the strong side defense. Like where could I help? And maybe you don't even have to go up to the player and say it, but what would you say? Like write it down on your pad. You know, I'm sure the coaches have you keeping some bullshit stats like that no one looks at. I was the same way. Don't worry. We all do the same stuff, you know, like, but yeah. And Matt, for you, like maybe even take into account, like when you're watching the game live, if you like next year, the year after, like when you're live on the sideline, like think about like what you would tell a player in that situation. Like how could you help? That's their next step for all of you. Like that's our homework. 1, travel with a board. Okay. Everyone should travel with a board, or like cardstock paper. You could write down plays. And then 2, like how can you help the team in game? That's when you create value for yourself. So
Love that.
any other questions? I got time. Teams playing Denver tonight. Game doesn't start till 9. So, but no, thank you all. Like, thank you all. I left my email. I left some presentations and projects I did via YouTube. Share them with whoever. There's no secrets. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But I appreciate all of you and thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, this was awesome, man. I've been recording this too, so after this, I'll throw this on YouTube and I'll email this out so everybody has it. But Ryan, this was awesome. Thanks for joining us. And you guys see Ryan's email. Feel free to reach out to him as well. But thanks for joining, guys. And I'm sure, yeah, we'll all be in touch soon. Thanks for jumping on, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Sam.
See you guys.
You guys.